souls to the very last drop.
So, welcome to Let's Talk with John Kane. And yes, I am in studio, and Reggie wasn't lying. I am here. Look,
no fake news here.
I'm gonna first apologize for a little bit of confusion last week. You got to forgive us. It was kind of last minute to know that we were even going to be on the air. I tried to do it remotely. We had a little bit of technical difficulty, but we banged out a pretty good show, I think, in the end. I'm not sure if Shawnee's joining us today. She had some stuff she had to take care of. And I said, look, you take care of what you got to take care of, and if you make it in, you make it in. Lots to catch up on. Even though we did do a show, we returned to local programming last week. We again a little bit tough to do what I would call more of a normal show, if my show is normal. I don't know, but I do want to cover some Native issues. I want to get through some things. I half in jest, when I did a promo for the show, I said, yes, I'm taking over the studio, but I'm not unplugging. I'm leaving us plugged in. In fact, I got us plugged into Facebook Live as well. It's what I try to do. I try to expand what we're doing, not just limit us to the FM signal and WBAI.org, but try to put us up on Facebook. I put the show up on YouTube. I put the show up as a podcast on SoundCloud. So you can find this show not only live a number of different ways, radio, internet, Facebook, but you can also find us after the fact in WBAI's archives, on my podcast, and of course on YouTube. So if you do catch a part of it and you want to catch the rest of it, by all means do so. Look, in spite of my banner saying that we're from 4 to 5, right now we're from 3 to 5. So we're gonna. And look, and I appreciate the extra time. When we got down to 1 hour, I found it really, really difficult to give you, the listener, the time that I wanted to give in terms of asking questions, adding your comments, maybe your criticisms. And look, we got a lot to talk about in general. Without doing another show about WBAI, which is not what I plan to do, there's... What happens in a situation like what we've gone through in the last month is a microcosm of what's happening everywhere. So I think there's a way to stretch that conversation and to even talk about our situation without talking about our situation. Look, we had a rough month. I was off for a month for a variety of reasons. Although we took a couple of shots at being on. In fact, as Reggie and I joked about last week, we were actually the last local program broadcast on WBAI through some really strange means. But regardless, there we were. But it's been a while, so there's been a lot of things I haven't been able to catch up with. We are in the middle of November. Now, in case you didn't know, and you probably don't, this is our special month. This is National Native American Heritage Month. Now, if you didn't know, well, there's probably a reason you didn't know, because nobody told you. and there's no public announcement. And in fact, every president, some say back to Nixon, but certainly back to the Bushes, there has been an executive proclamation, not just a White House link, but an executive proclamation declaring November National Native American Heritage Month. And, and it goes on to, frankly, blow a bunch of smoke up our butts about how wonderful we are. But you notice it's Heritage Month. It's not Indigenous Peoples Month. So it's not about acknowledging who we are. It's about acknowledging somehow who we were. But this year, President Trump didn't say a word. Now, at first, the criticism was he's not proclaiming it our special month, and of course there was a lot of outrage. And for me, a lot of it's a little bit of fake outrage, because frankly, having Donald Trump declare anything relating to Native people is not something that I'm hanging on. But here's what happened: he did do a White House proclamation, I guess, but didn't tell anybody. It just posted up on the White House website. You can find it. You can look onto the White House website, and you can find an executive proclamation saying that November is Native American Heritage Month. But he made no public statement. What he did do was make a public statement declaring what do you call it? Let's see, National American History and Founders Month. So he chose to make that public announcement rather than do what previous presidents have done, acknowledging a tribute to native history. Instead, he trampled over the top of it with some new proclamation declaring, as if American history isn't like celebrated every freaking month anyway. But no, so that's what he did. So he trampled all over our special month, and in fact, I thought he should have just called it Founding Fathers Genocide Month, because that's kind of really what took place there. But anyway, so I did a show back home. I called it The Grinch Who Stole Our Special Month. Well, it turns out there's a couple of Grinches going on here. We had a ruling last week in the Western District of New York federal court system. Judge William Scretany made a ruling against the Senecas relating to the state trying to squeeze the Senecas for $1 billion of gaming revenue. Now, it's illegal for the state to tax native gaming, any state to tax native gaming. But they've been getting away with it, and they've been getting away with it because, frankly, the courts uphold the state's right to squeeze money out of native territories, regardless of the underlying federal law, which is the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, that says states can't tax native gaming. In fact, what the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act lays out is that if a state's going to get revenue sharing from a native territory, and this is the agency in charge of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act is the Interior Department, more specifically the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And they made it very clear that for revenue sharing not to be considered a tax, the states have to provide something of value. And that concession that the state makes to a native gaming operation has to be both substantial and quantifiable. And by substantial, it means it's got to be, frankly, it's got to be worth more than what the native gaming facility is paying you. Otherwise, why would they do it if it's only a wash? And it's got to be quantifiable. You got to be able to look at what the state's giving up and say, okay, it has a value, and it has to have a value somewhat equitable to what is being paid. Now, the Senecas had this revenue sharing agreement with the state for 14 years, and they paid $1.5 billion to the state of New York for over that 14 years. Most of that, $1 billion of it, just coming in the last 7 years. So what the state's trying to make them do is continue to make that payment over the next 7 years. So that would have been through, essentially, we're already 2 years into this conflict. Through 2023, the state expects to get another $1 billion from Seneca Gaming. And a federal judge just ruled in favor of the state. And what he really ruled was that an arbitration ruling where two white men on that arbitration panel said, even though there's no language for the payments to continue through 2023, the Senecas must pay because otherwise they'd be getting something for nothing. And what this federal judge said is, well, I'm not going to vacate that order. Whatever they said goes. So we have, again, in the middle of our special month, we've got the Senecas being screwed for another $1 billion. Another $1 billion. Because frankly, the $1.5 billion they paid already, they didn't get anything of value for it. And so that's more part of our special month. So what else is happening great for indigenous people during our special month? Well, the U.S. Has backed a coup, toppling the only sitting indigenous president of a country in the Western Hemisphere. Evo Morales was essentially taken out of office by a military coup backed by the United States. And look, the United States say, well, we had nothing to do with it. No, but you're backing it now. And in fact, the white woman that's replacing him, and I say white woman, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, because the white woman made she says, we don't need to have any more of this Indian stuff going on in our country. No, I mean, she flat out made bold statements about Evo Morales, who was, again, the president for 14 years, actually navigated this country through some great economic successes, lifting up the middle class. I mean, eliminating poverty, not completely, but made more strides towards the elimination of poverty and economic injustice than anybody. And of course, it's not unique to Bolivia. You've got Ecuador that's having issues between indigenous people and the powers that be. Brazil, Venezuela, and if you look at all of these countries, all of the divisions run right along racial lines. It's usually either the people of color, including the indigenous people, against the more European or Eurocentric people in each country. Whether it's Bolsonaro, whether it's there's Juan Guaido in Venezuela. Or the battles that are even taking place in the other countries like Ecuador and Colombia. You will see that the lines get drawn between primarily between the indigenous people and along with the black people who were part of the slave trade into these countries against the white, wealthy, Eurocentric segments of those societies. Oftentimes, those guys, the wealthy white people, being the minority. So it kind of rings a little bit of some of that apartheid stuff. So, and this is what frustrates me, and why I have to say why WBAI is so important. The mainstream media will not touch the racial component of these issues. I don't know, Reggie, have you heard anybody talk about this being, a race war in Bolivia?
No.
I mean, other than they mentioned that he was an
just a handful of media outlets are even scratching the surface, and one of them happens to be WBAI talking about that. Yeah,
exactly. So, again, our special month. So, what does the United States do? They back a coup against an indigenous leader. I mean, that's look, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, they're consistent at least.
Yeah. I don't know, but I don't know if I think that's an at least.
I'm not saying it's good, but at least they're following through.
Well, it does make them predictable. I mean, I've heard plenty of people say that. I just assume all the racist white people put their Confederate flag hanging up on their porches. So at least I know that's the house I don't want to go to.
Exactly.
Wear a label. I mean, keep your MAGA hats on. So at least I can say, nah, I don't want anything to do with this guy. Yeah. All right. Of course, you everybody's talking about the impeachment hearings, but I got a different take on the impeachment hearings. Everybody thinks this is about the Democrats impeaching the president. No, it's not. It's about the Republicans impeaching the Democrats. I mean, let's be clear. If you watch any of that stuff, and look, I pride myself at saying it's not my system. It doesn't mean I don't pay attention to it, folks. I absolutely do pay attention to it, folks. But you listen to any of these hearings, and every Republican is lambasting, not just the witnesses. They even ignore the fact that there's witnesses in front of them. Don't ask them questions. They just go on to lambaste the Democrats. And look, there's plenty of wrong on both sides, and it's kind of funny when you look at the subjects that are ignored, or if you look at the inconsistencies. The same language that the Republicans are using with this impeachment of Trump is the same stuff the Democrats were saying when Bill Clinton was being impeached or being recommended for impeachment because of his sexual indiscretions and lying about it and the whole bit. I mean, when you listen to the Democrats or the Republicans, they sound just like the Democrats are in the Clinton era. And so it's the hypocrisy is all over the place, and it is what it is. And that's why for somebody like me, American politics is a spectator sport. And, while I'll weigh in and I certainly have something to say about it, I just think it's, I don't think we should be consumed by it, but we also shouldn't be caught up in the in the fantasy of it all. And so that's my thoughts on that stuff. But let me see what else I got here. Again, so when we talk about this being our special month, this is what gets missed in this whole thing is that there is still no effort to really tell a complete story about U.S. history. One of the, I know I've talked about it, people are going to call me out on it, but I've talked about the idea of writing a book about the U.S. presidents. And our word for the president is called Author Gaius, and it means town destroyer, loosely translate the town destroyer. And although we coined the phrase for George Washington because of the Sullivan campaigns that he ran against the Senecas, which was a scorched earth, let the Senecas know the terror of their chastisement. That's basically the George Washington coining the phrase and using terrorism as a military strategy against the Senecas. So that's where the word Author Gaius was used originally for George Washington and his Sullivan campaign. But it didn't take long for Native people to realize that every president had the same intent. They may have done it with different intensity, but every president has had the same intent. And it didn't matter what political party they were or whatever else. So here's the problem. When we talk about Native American Heritage Month, oftentimes Native history, the way it's taught in schools to children, is that it's a period of time, that Indians represent the period of American history before discovery. That's literally the sequence: Indians, discovery, colonization, revolution. So they go through every of those periods of American history. So we were a period that came and went. But when you analyze what all 45 presidents have done in their administrations with either the language specifically from these men, whether it's Washington, Jefferson, Jackson, Lincoln, Roosevelt again, any of them all the way through, Ronald Reagan, talking about how great he takes care of his Indians kind of thing. I mean, there's all kinds of racist comments that have come out of every single president. And the reason I wanted to do this book is because I think people, rather than putting us in a period of American history, they don't realize that if you contextualize our existence, we've been here all along. I mean, we get the occasional mention about a code talker or Billy Mills winning the Olympics, or Jim Thorpe or something like that. But there's still no context to our existence in our homeland, still surviving one of the longest running genocides in the history of the world with the rest of American history. And so when you can grab a quote or a policy or a piece of legislation from every administration, all 45 presidents, that demonstrate this white supremacy, specifically as it relates to Native people. And of course, that white supremacy wasn't limited to Native people. But I think that's the reason it's important to tell the stuff. Now, look, during our time that was off, I kept some dialogue going with some of my listeners. I kept doing Facebook. And one of the things that, I got some comments and some questions. A few people suggested that I'm too negative. Like Reggie said, some people suggest that I'm angry. Look, you guys listen to me and get a chance to hear me or have to put up with me, depending on how you look at it, I guess, once a week, hopefully, once a week, for an hour, or in this case now for 2 hours, once a week. But this isn't my life. I mean, I think to try to characterize somebody as the angry Indian or the guy who's negative. Look, I've got children and grandchildren. The main part of my life is the relationship I have with my family. Now, that's not what I'm doing radio shows about. But so when I come on and I tell this history, I'm not telling the history to paint myself as a victim. I come down here with a certain amount of confidence that I can share this history with people, more to promote the idea that we are surviving this stuff and that we still view ourselves with a future, not without consequence. Look, our people struggle with we lead every list you don't want to be on: suicide, teen pregnancy, depression, poverty, unemployment. We lead every list you don't want to be. Life expectancy, we don't lead that one. We lead the lowest life expectancy. Death by cop. Yep, I know Black Lives Matter, but if you look at the numbers, Native people lead in that category of death by cop in every demographic except for the age demographic, except for the 16 to 22-year-olds. Every other age group, Native people as a proportion of our population lead that category. So if you don't tell the history, then why are we still on these lists at the top of all these lists? Well, if you don't tell the history and you don't tell the circumstances that bring us to where we're at, then you can believe that we're genetically inferior somehow. And that's the reason that we die early, or we have alcohol problems, or that we have, substance abuse problems, or any number of these things. But if you don't understand the history, so that's part of what I try to bring here. Now, I don't only talk about Native issues. Obviously, I even talked about Donald Trump, who is, although he's a nemesis, he's not specifically a Native issue. But I also think offering a Native perspective. And, my perspective is not going to be about, rainbows and unicorns. I'm going to offer a little bit more of perhaps a jaded view. Why? Because of a jaded history. So, look, will I do happier radio going forward? I don't know. I mean, but I've said it before. I don't view my task in being here to help people feel good about themselves. That's not why I come to WBAI to do radio. I come here because I think there's a perspective that most people, not just in the New York City listening area, but most people generally, and even my own people, don't understand the historical context of the things that bring us to where we're at right now. So I wanted to mention that. So I mean, I think it's important to do that. So hey, look, we're at the bottom of the hour. We're gonna take a break. When I come back, I do have to talk about WBAI a little bit, and we'll do that when we come back. I got to talk about what I need from you guys, and of course, you kind of know what's coming, but we'll talk about it when we come back. This is John Kane, and this is Let's Talk. Thanks for listening.
I was young, foolish, killing time and having fun. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know you were the one. You're my always and forever. Dance is dancing, we get old. Raise a family together, two hearts and one soul. I was raised to be a fighter, stand up for my rights. You showed me another way. You turned the dark into the light. You're my always and forever. Dance is dancing, we get on. And raise a family together. Two hearts and one soul. Then our babies came along, and it changed my life. I realized there's something bigger. I had to make you my wife. When you're always and forever, dance is dance when we get old. Raise a family together, two hearts and one soul. We get a little older, but remember this night, the way we looked at each other, with the fire in our eyes. You're my always and forever. Dance is dancing, we get old. Raise a family together, two hearts and one soul. Raise a family together, two hearts and one soul. We will always be together, two hearts and one soul.
All right, thanks for coming back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk. I am in studio. If you're watching us on Facebook, you know we're giving you video proof that I'm here.
He's here.
So, and it is great to be back. Again, I was glad to be able to do a show last week, but it feels great to be back in the WBAI studio doing this show. And look, I'm grateful to be to have been returned to 2 hours, and we are going to go to your calls. In fact, I'm not even waiting to the top of the hour. I got a couple things I want to do first. Look, part of what our circumstance that caused the problems last month has to do with the fact that we do need to be more self-sufficient. In order to keep the wolves at bay, we have got to be able to support ourselves. So I'm as usual, and I'm not even going to say that we're in a fund drive. Look, we're WBAI. We are always in a fund drive, and I don't mean that programming has to be disrupted, but you need to know that anytime you turn the radio on, you hear us. You have to know that we need your support. You know, I used to do commercial radio. I used to buy time on commercial radio, and I used to have to pay over $300 on a commercial signal in Buffalo, New York, to be on the air. So when I was running 2 hours, which I was paying, actually it was $350. So I was paying $700 to be on the air for 2 hours. Look, I'm not asking you folks listening to make sure that I'm producing $750 or whatever, $700 to do a 2-hour show, but there's really no reason not to. So I'm asking you to go to the pledge line, become a WBAI buddy. And it is important. It's important to me, and it's important to the station that when you make a donation, that you do give some indication on what shows that what shows gravitate you towards to WBAI. So they know. It helps them with programming. It helps them to know what shows are not just loosening up your wallets, but that are capturing your ear. So I'm asking you to go to the pledge line, 516-620-3602. You can make a one-time donation. And look, if you become a buddy and you want to do $10 a month, that's great. But I got to tell you, there's some of you out there who are lawyers. And as a Native person, I know there's some lawyers out there who've made a bunch of money off of Indian country. And I know you guys can make the bigger donation. You can make $1,000. You can make, $1,000 a month even. So I'm asking for some of you who listen to this show, whether you listen to it for entertainment, for education, or perhaps maybe you listen to the show because you do need to. Part of your job requires that you understand what the winds are saying when it comes to a Native perspective. But regardless of why you listen, I'm asking you to go to the pledge line or go to the website, which is give2wbai.org. That's www.give2wbai.org, and become a buddy. That means a sustaining member, somebody who does something, makes a donation consistently once a month through their credit card or their checking account or however you want to do it. Make a one-time donation, but we do need your support. It's the only way we can keep the wolves at bay, so to speak. And I'm not just talking about Pacifica Corp. I just mean in general. In order for us to do what we do, we need listeners to support. And we also need you to spread the word. We need you to tell other people about a show that you've heard or about something you heard on WBAI that you didn't hear anybody else. We need to attract attention. The reason I do Facebook live streaming of the show is to try to open up a little bit, not just so we can reach the Facebook audience, but so we can drive some of that Facebook audience back to the FM signal. So that's the reason I do what I do. And again, I don't want to belabor the point, but I may not pay $300 an hour to do the show, but I do spend about that to come to New York once a week to do this show. So I make my commitment, and it's a financial commitment. I'm asking you, the listeners, to do the same thing. So again, go to the pledge line. It's 516-620-3602. And here's what I'm going to tell you right now. I'm not going to tell you specifically what it is, but for everybody, and I don't want to just generate 10 WBAI buddies. I want to generate 40. And for everyone, I will send a gift. And whether that gift is something that I've offered in the past, whether it's a book or whether it's a CD, one of my Unity flags, or the Tuscarora Woodworks carving, I've got some of these things that I've been accumulating. I'm not going to offer them up as premium. I'm going to offer them as a gift to you for becoming a WBAI buddy. So become a WBAI buddy. I'll check with the front office, find out who has signed up as a part of Let's Talk, and I will send out a gift. It'll be a gift of my choosing, but so you will get a specific token of my appreciation by becoming a WBAI buddy. So again, go to the website, give2wbai.org, or go to our pledge line, 516-620-3602. Or stop by the studio. I mean, we'll take cash donations right at the door. whatever works for you. So couple of announcements. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I'm planning on doing an event on December 19th, and that's what will be the third week, I guess, of December. And on a Thursday night. I do plan to do an event on December 19th, whether it's a film, and I'll know more by next week. I'll rough it all out. I had to check with schedules with the Brooklyn Commons, and I'll be doing that downstairs at the Brooklyn Commons in the Media Center, so I look forward to that. So if you're wondering when am I going to do another live event, that live event will take place in December, on December 19th, downstairs at the Brooklyn Commons. But I do want to, somebody sent me this information, and I wanted to share this with you. It's an event that's coming up next Saturday, not this Saturday, but next Saturday. I don't know, Reggie, if you're familiar with this, but there's it's called Our Role in the Revolution, the Struggle for Racial, Social, and Economic Justice. It's a town hall with Cornell West at Rutgers. So this is from 12 to 3 p.m. Saturday, November 23rd at Rutgers University, the Gold Dome Athletic Center. That's 42 Warren Street in Newark, New Jersey. You can register by going to bit.ly/Cornell West Newark. Again, this is an event that's taking place at Rutgers University at the Gold Dome Athletic Center. That's next Saturday. That'd be November 23rd from noon till 3 p.m. Again,
is that the People's Organization for Progress event?
It's not just it's listed here as the struggle for racial, social, and economic justice. It's not the Poor People's Campaign, but but in a way it's connected to all that. Right. The only thing missing off of that is environmental justice. But look, I'll fight for those three too. so again, that's next Saturday, and I wanted to spread the word on that. But short of that, I really like to go to some calls. We're going to do a full hour of calls after the top of the hour, but let's see what we can get in with the remainder of this hour. So let me see what. Let's give this a shot, and let's go to some calls. Just so to get the number out there again, I've given the pledge line 516-620-3602, but the studio number is 212-209-2877. That's 212-209. 2877. All right. We'll go to your call. Just to remind people, when we do go to you, you need to turn your radio down so we don't get all that feedback from hearing us on the radio. And I'm asking your name not because I'm gonna come find you. It's just a courtesy, so I know who I'm talking to. So I'm gonna ask your name, and again, for my own curiosity, I'd like to know where you're calling from. So caller, you're up first. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, John, it's Lourdes. Nice to hear you back on the radio again.
Well, it's nice to hear your voice again. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. I just want to say congratulations. You're now on for 2 hours again.
Yes, I am.
Yes, and I just have to comment. You are not negative nor angry, and I think anyone that says that is simply just trying to silence you.
Well, you know me, though, so you know that I'm not an angry person. But, it's a funny thing, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because an incident took place closer to home. There's a sportscaster on the Canadian side. His name is Don Cherry. And Don Cherry does Hockey Tonight in Canada, which is, hockey is like the national pastime for Canada. And Don Cherry on Monday, which was what do they call it? Armistice Day in Europe. They call it Veterans Day in the United States, and they call it Remembrance Day in Canada. We also call it Canandaigua Treaty Day, but that's another subject. But so on the Canadian side, this Don Cherry, who's supposed to be doing some commentary about hockey, goes on a rant about immigrants, and he does the proverbial Archie Bunker, "You people. You people, you come to our country and you drink our milk and honey and you won't even cough off a buck for a poppy," is what he was going on. So he was trying to slam anybody who would not contribute money for their, this whole poppy thing they do for Veterans Day and that kind of stuff. And he caused a bit of an outrage, but he did the whole "you people" thing. And actually, the Sportsnet Canada, I think they fired him over this whole thing. But the funny thing is that expression, "you people," it was interesting because when I do get criticisms about the show that I do here or the one that I do back home in Seneca territory, I get hit with that, you people are always so angry. You people are always bringing up the past. You people always play the race card. I don't think people could realize, I don't think any people, not just you people, but I don't think anybody could realize how often Native people get hit with the you people thing. You know, and I remember watching All in the Family back in the day with Archie Bunker. Every time Archie Bunker would do the whole you people thing, you'd almost hear the whether it was a real live studio audience or not, the gasp, like, oh, he said it again. But it becomes such a common vernacular. And for people who have been referred to as dogs and savages and everything else, the idea of being referred to as you people might seem like a step up. But it isn't. It's just the evolution in racial terms.
Yeah, I have to agree with you.
So, you know, so when you bring that up, look, I don't mind somebody offering me a little bit of criticism, but understand there's a reason I talk about the history that I talk about. And look, if it's negative, if it's uncomfortable, I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm just telling you some truth about history. And look, if somebody wants to debate me with me over it, and I try to make sure that when I take a call, in fact, I've been criticized for keeping callers on the line too long and letting them air out too much of their their vitriol sometimes. But I genuinely, not only do I want to know what people are thinking, but when I hear some of the more hostile kind of comments, it helps me for the next time. It helps me grow as a person to understand, okay, there are people out there that view things that way. Because honestly, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to tell people I have a perspective, and I just want you to know what it is. You don't have to agree with it. You just need to know that it's out there. I certainly know the racist views are out there, but maybe folks don't know that there's a native view or an indigenous view that is something they never really considered. So, but I thank you for your comments, and I do appreciate. And you know, look, I'm not going to always make light or try to joke about being called angry, but honestly, when somebody calls me angry, I think it is somewhat laughable because I'm not angry. I'm not mad at anybody, but I will always speak out against racial injustice. So, Lourdes, I want to thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.
And looking forward to hearing you.
All right. Let me go give the number out again. It's 212-209-2877. Again, it's good to hear from Lourdes. I know she's a teacher, and I know when we enter into this special month, the schools are supposed to make special acknowledgement about this stuff, but I'll tell you, most don't. Most have no idea. And when I'm sure that when I said at the beginning of this program that it was our special month, some people are thinking, what are you talking about? You know, and I say that. And I'm not, even with the whole Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, I don't care if somebody wants to give us a holiday or give us a special month. I don't need that kind of validation as far as I'm concerned. The bigger issue I have is the pushback. And you know, look, I don't care. I wasn't hanging, on by my nails waiting for Donald Trump to validate my existence by declaring November Native American Heritage Month. In fact, it's the outrage that I heard expressed about it, really made me think, well, that's kind of fake. Do we really need Donald Trump to validate us? But anyway, all right. Do we got any online? Okay. All right. Let's go to another caller. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Okay, I'm Ken. I'm from Ozone Park.
Hey, Ken. Thanks for calling to be a part of the show.
Oh, well, thanks for having the show. I mean, I respect your viewpoints, and like you say, it's not set in stone, but this is the way you think.
Well, and yeah, I just think that understanding the history that I've experienced, we all come from a different place. I mean, facts don't change, but opinions and perspectives do. So I'm just trying to offer mine, and I'm not trying to indoctrinate anybody. But I will try to say that I try to be accurate when I talk about history. And if I do get something wrong, I appreciate anybody calling in to let me know that I misquoted somebody or misrepresented a period of history. So, but no, I'm grateful that there are folks like you out there listening and taking it in, even if it doesn't necessarily change your perspective. It just should open up the minds of people to let people know that there are other perspectives they may not have considered.
It fills in the holes in history.
Sure. Well, and like I said, one of the problems is when you teach Native history as if it was a period that came and went and that we aren't still here, it doesn't fill in the fact that we had people who were enlisted in the armed forces, and we've had people who, there's been a lot to do about the two women who got voted into Congress in the last midterm elections, Deborah Haaland from New Mexico and Sharice David from Kansas. But there have been Native people that have served in office. Frankly, more Republicans than Democrats, and that hasn't served us that well. Most people don't know, and if you don't, it's no surprise. But there was actually a Native vice president, Charles Curtis, who was the vice president under Herbert Hoover. Was a heartbeat away from the presidency, and he was Native, and he sucked for Native people. I mean, he did more to eradicate lands of, even though he was from Kansas, he did more to, or Nebraska, well, Kansas or Nebraska, but he did more to wipe out land holdings of Native people in Oklahoma than any other legislator. And he was a congressman, a senator, and ultimately the vice president of the United States.
And there used to be a Native American from Idaho too, who was very anti-Native American.
Yeah, well, we get those, and even guys like Ben Nighthorse Campbell, who you would think he actually resented the fact that he was always regarded as the token Native person. I mean, and the fact that he throw a headdress on to christen or do the groundbreaking for the National Museum of the American Indian or whatever else. He didn't like being that in that role. He didn't want to be the Native guy in the Senate. And so it's funny. Reggie and I talked about this before. Mitch McConnell went out and said, "Why do black people need reparations? They got Obama for 8 years. That's their reparations." I mean, that's literally what Mitch McConnell had said. So for me, when I hear about a Native person getting elected to offices, look, they don't. Once they jumped into that fray, they're yours. We lost them to you. They're not representing us anymore. Don't tell me that we're all good now because we got a couple of congresswomen or whatever else. I mean. But anyway, and again, I think these are conversations that we can have, and some of them are absurd, and I don't mind laughing about some of them. But there are ramifications to everything, including the mascot issue, including the failure to teach history. I mean, the biggest problem with Columbus Day is the fact that we're teaching 5-year-old kids stuff that's not true. And I think that's and I think these things do have consequences, and I think that's why I think it's so important that we make proper adjustments.
Okay, but the point I got something completely different is what I called about.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, now I don't know how BAI figures out how many people are listening. My thought is if they're using Arbitron, they're completely wrong. I mean, I would never subscribe as a BAI listener to Arbitron. Yeah. I don't think half the people out there would.
I think it's the facts of the matter, and this has been studied pretty well. Any station that especially stations that have a strong presence of people of color are always misrepresented by Arbitron or the Nielsen ratings or any of that stuff. So, and I know there is weight being put on some of these Arbitron numbers, and I think they are terribly inaccurate. And I agree with you. I know it's tough. I mean, because everybody's looking for a metric to measure, what is the listenership? I mean, look, there are some people saying that our listenership is only about 5,000 or 4,000, and it's got to be 20,000. Look, we're in a city of 10 million people in the New York metropolitan area. There's no reason that we don't have 10, 20, or 30,000 people listening at a given time. And you know what? We may, and there may be no way of knowing that. But one of the, Arbitron is one of the ways. The other way that people measure is by the dollars that come in, by people who donate. But we also know that less than, and this is for NPR, which is probably more successful at fundraising than WBAI is. They get less than 5% listenership that contribute to their station. So, I mean, I don't think there is proper extrapolation. I have no idea how many people listen to my show, or listen to WBAI through the rest of the 24-hour grid. But I do know that we need more. I know we need more listeners, and I know we need more financial support. But I do agree with you. I think Arbitron numbers, and I'm not saying that because I think I've got terrible Arbitron numbers. I don't know my numbers are any worse than anybody else. But I do agree with you. I think there should be.
Well, I just think that the average listener does not want to be categorized listening to BAI in this political climate.
That's it. You make a good point.
The same thing with being a buddy. I've got my bank account associated with your station, and who are they going to come after?
Yeah. So are you suggesting we got a bunch of closet listeners?
I think you got plenty of closet listeners, and these people should just go out to the post office and make out a $25, $50, $100 money order with Oedipus Anonymous as the name and send it to the station if you're,
Well, and that goes for callers. Look, when I tell people, give me your name and where you're calling from, you can give me any name you want. I can have 4 Bobs in a row, and it's fine with me. But you're right. I think you're right. I think it is a tough political climate. I mean, again, I couldn't help but as I was listening to some of those hearings yesterday, what consequence are those 2 guys who testified, even though they were probably more Republican leaning than Democratic leaning because of the military backgrounds and stuff like that. But you can bet those people, along with this Vindman and other people, they're paying the price for being honest, and that's. And again, it's not just Donald Trump, but this is the political climate that has been growing for a number of years. That people are going to be categorized, they're going to be labeled, and there's a cost associated with that. So, I never thought about the consequence of publicly announcing that you're a WBAI listener. But you know what? You guys can still listen in the closet. It's okay.
Well, that's the great thing about radio. You can't trace me. I'm on the internet. You can follow what my IP, whatever it is.
You're making some great points, and these are points that I've never even considered. So that's the beauty of doing this and having a caller call in. You made a good point. There are people who are worried about becoming members, or they're worried about carrying a tote bag.
I don't blame them.
I don't blame them either.
In this climate. That's why I say you've got to. And that goes with programming, too. I mean, Linda says, donate to this program. Now, what if I listen to 10 programs, but I want to take the one with the best premium?
Right.
My other nine programs, I'm not going to see again. I've had so many great programs taken off the air because I didn't donate to that program.
Yeah, you're right. That's not fair either.
And you people, I mean, not you people. But
gotta love it. Go ahead. You damn radio people. Oh, that's great. We'll go ahead and finish your thought.
But what I'm trying to say is there's got to be a way I can vote like, okay, we just accepted in the city here ranked voting. Why can't we do the same with ranked programming?
That's a good point. I know. Look, I understand managing. A program grid is sometimes more art than science, but you're right. I mean, one thing you have to understand who the listeners are in New York, and if you become too detached from that, so when we talk about elites, whether we're talking about liberal elites or whether we're talking about conservative elites. It's real easy for people to be placed in a bubble and have no idea what the impacts of some of the shows that we were doing are. And I think some of them are. I think clearly there's going to be some shows that are more impactful to some people than others. But I think it is a shame to have to deprive some people who have grown accustomed to a certain program or a certain line of information that's coming to them and have that taken away. But again, I don't envy the decisions that have to be made about trying to improve the station and some of those improvements. Sometimes fail. Sometimes the attempt to improve the program grid, you take off programs. I'm grateful that we've returned to 2 hours. And I don't know how long.
The only way you can do a talkback show is 2 hours. If you don't have 2 hours for a talkback show, you miss too much. Then people get disgusted.
Well, and it makes it really tough, especially if you have a guest. Because when I have a guest on, I try not to have a 5-minute guest. I try to have somebody that joins me for at least a half hour, so we can actually get into it. Exactly. So. And look, if you're only on for 1 hour, by the time you set up and you bring a guest in and you do any kind of announcements, and you're lucky to get 15 minutes of phone call. So I'm grateful to have been returned to 2 hours, and I'm going to take full advantage of it as long as I can, so we can get
that's what made
folks
your
like you.
program great. Was the fact that it was a call-in program.
Well, and I know that a lot of the programs, because of the current circumstances, they have opened up the phone lines, and that's great too. But you're going to get a little bit different. It's a different flavor when you call into my show. At least I think so. And so again, I appreciate.
Every
folks.
show's different there,
Sure.
John.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, I used to listen to when You know, the news was on during the day, during listening hours, and you could call in. That's a great show in other news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then they stopped the call in, and they had this one caller, Ed, who knew a lot about technology and filled us in on all the gaps that were in the show. And you miss these people. I think the listeners are just as important as the hosts.
Absolutely, and I think that's, I was really grateful when I was offered a show on WBAI that it was a talkback show, and because I've said this before, when I first got put up for this gig, I was advised to try to keep the focus narrow, with narrow topics, and I said, no, if somebody wants to call in, we'll take whatever topic somebody wants to talk about. So, Ken, I want to tell you, I appreciate the call, I appreciate your sentiment, and
one
look,
other thing before I leave.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, when people send in their pledges or something, you send something back. My suggestion, which has been thwarted, was send back business cards.
Oh, that's a good point.
One side have BAI and anything you want. The other side to give to somebody this show you would like, and you put down the name of the show with this thing, and you hand them the BAI card with a show and the time that they could listen. You fill it in yourself.
Well, I think that's a good idea, because then the person who receives that business card can also pass it along. So no,
and he's got all the BAI information, how to get the archives, where we are, etc.
That's a good idea.
In.
All right.
But that just went through the air. Okay, John, thanks for listening to me.
All right,
and,
thanks for calling in. I appreciate it.
Great work.
All right, thank you. All right, that's Ken from Ozone Park. All right, that's good stuff. He made a lot of great points, and I don't need to reiterate them. But I agree. I never considered the closet WBAI listener, the one who wants to, who doesn't need to advertise that they listen. At least it's one thing for them to tell the people that are close to them, but the idea. Look, as much as we want to promote the station, we have to respect that some people want to listen to us privately. So that's a great point. All right, hey, we're at the top of the hour, so we'll take a break. We'll go out on another Murray Porter tune, and we'll come back to your calls. Again, the number is 212-209-2877. Hey, while we're on break, it's also a good opportunity to call the pledge line, which is
516-620-3602 is the number. You're welcome, John.
Thank you, Reggie. All right, we'll take a break, and we'll be right back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk.
Everybody is the same. Everybody's got a mother. Everybody's got a name. Never mind the color of another man's skin. We need to see the light shine somewhere. We're all in this thing together. We're all in the same canoe. And if you're gonna make it down that river, you're gonna need me, and I'm gonna need you. Turn on the television, put on the news. Everywhere I look, everybody's got the blues. We got to love one another, got to get along. All we need is music, all we need is song. We're all in this thing together. We're all in the same canoe. And if we're gonna make it down that river.
All right, thanks for coming back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk. I don't have Shawnee in with us this week. She works for a living, so And I know that's working for a living in New York City is not easy. So she's out hustling to try to. I think she was doing some review or something like that. So I told her, no problem. I got it covered this week, and I was glad she was here last week to help her and Reggie cover me from inside the studio while I was trying to connect from the outside. So I appreciate that. Hey, I wanted to make well, first off, the music we're playing is Murray Porter's CD Stand Up, and this is one of the gifts that in fact, I'm going to say it. The first 10 buddies that sign up to and list this show as the show that they want to become a sponsor in the name of, I will make sure that a Murray Porter CD gets put in the mail for you. So and that's his latest CD, which is Stand Up. Some great stuff on it. Murray Porter, every album Murray Porter does, he dedicates at least half the tracks towards social justice issues. So as you listen to his CD, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So I am asking people to sign up and become WBI buddies, and you can do that by going to the pledge line 516-620-3602 or going online to www.give2WBAI.org. That's give2WBAI.org. Follow the prompts to become a buddy. Give a one-time donation. If you give a one-time donation, in the name of the show, you get a one-time donation of $50 or more. I'll make sure that we get a CD out to you as well. So, and I do have some other gifts. So we're coming, and people are into this Christmas time thing. I've got a couple of well, I guess we would call them ornaments. They are Tuscarora Woodworks Tree of Peace carvings that they're laser cut, and I'll make sure a couple of we put some of those out there if people are interested. I know these aren't listed premiums. These are gifts that I'm putting out there for as a token of my appreciation to those people who become a WBI buddy. So I wanted to put it out there. On Ken's note, one thing I think is important for people to understand. Arbitron, we're not just saying that Arbitron is inaccurate because we think that the numbers are skewed against us. That's not the point. Arbitron, the very reason for Arbitron is for commercial radio. It's designed for commercial radio because commercial radio, they sell advertisements. And so in order to figure out what rate they could charge for their advertisements, these numbers that they get supplied from Arbitron help them determine, well, what is an advertisement worth on a commercial radio station. So it is automatically, it's built into the system that Arbitron is not really a metric developed for listener-supported radio, for non-commercial radio. So I want to throw that out there, and I want to thank Ken again for a great call and for a lot of good comments. I appreciate it. All right, the number is 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to be a part of the show. I know we got a couple of people lined up, so let's go right to the callers. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hello. This is Joan from Manhattan.
Hey, Joan. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, hi. First of all, welcome back, everybody. It's so great to have you all you people back, all you BAI people back.
But did I start something now?
I think you did. Yes, we're all going to be extremely self-conscious now. We're going to use it and overuse it till it's gone.
If it sticks in our throats a little bit, then I guess then I kind of make our point. So, well, thank you for that. Go ahead.
It's good to be conscious. Yeah. So two things. First of all, I heard something that sounded like a good news story. It went by very quickly on the news, about a minute or so. I didn't get the details. Are you familiar with something called John Jay High School? Somewhere in New York State, I think. I don't think it's in New York City. It went by on one of the news stations. They have decided, or the school board decided, or somebody decided to change the name of the sports team. And I didn't get the details. I don't know what the sports team was, but it was a name, offensive to Native people, mascot and all that. So they're in the process of changing it. Do you have any details on that, John Jay High School?
I'll look it up and I'll find out. But I will say that the campaign that we've kind of led to not only eradicate some of the more offensive words like redskin, which is a dictionary defined slur, but just the general use of Native people as mascots is something that we've talked about a great deal, and I've been active in a lot of the communities. The very high school that I went to, and even the high school that Shawnee went to, were both schools that used native mascots. And when you find yourself like the less than 1% of the population of a village that is 98% white, and it's really an awkward kind of thing. So I'll find out more about John Jay High School. I know that there are several, there's quite a few schools still in New York State that have native mascots. There's actually 2 high schools left in New York State. One near Utica called Oriskany, and another one out near Hornell in the southern tier, out past Corning and that neck of the woods, called Canisteo Greenwood. Those 2 schools still call themselves the Redskins, but even the most heinous of them all still exists.
It's amazing that people don't get how offensive that is.
Well, especially
could not get it.
Well, especially when you consider that there are entire states like Maine and California that have prohibited it, and certainly there have been counties and townships and school boards and that kind of stuff. So anytime I hear somebody say, "Oh no, we don't mean it to be offensive," well, it doesn't matter whether you mean it to be offensive.
I don't know how else you could mean it, though.
Well, especially, and one of the things that I always talk about is at the same, because I'm very familiar with Native history and the history of oppression, including the residential school era that existed from the mid 19th century to the later part of the 20th century. Most of these schools adopted these native mascots at the same time that native kids were being beaten for speaking their language or for trying to profess their identity. So when you consider that native kids were being beaten for being native, while white kids could put on their mom's lipstick across their face and call themselves warriors and beat on their oatmeal drums, I mean, there's more. It's more than just ironic. And the problem. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I wear eagle feathers because I understand, am I right, that eagle feathers are a particularly sacred thing and only certain people get to wear it? And so people going out there pretending to be Indian chiefs with headdresses on their head is extremely sacrilegious. Am I right about that?
Even if we don't get into the spiritual significance, here's the bottom line. It's actually illegal for people to have eagle feathers. Native people are the only people, and whether you agree with this or not, it is illegal.
Right.
It is illegal
for endangered, right?
Well, because they're endangered
Eagles
species,
endangered.
and people place a value on them, and they try to sell them. So it's actually unlawful. It's illegal for a non-native person to be in possession of an eagle feather. But even the whole mockery of what a headdress means, or and the misrepresentation, the pan-Indian nature of.
And I always wondered, people don't get it. Sometimes you have to explain it to them, turn it around on them and ask them how they feel. Let's say they're Roman Catholic. How would you feel honored by a team that called itself, I don't know, the the Washington Papists, right? And at halftime they had a guy come out dressed like the Pope, pretending to give people sprinkle holy water on people. They would find it extremely offensive. They would say, "How dare you mock our religion that way?"
Or more specifically, I mean, you think about there's always a big pushback from the Jewish community because of anti-Semitism. So if you had a school that really had nothing to do with Jewish people, but were mocking Jewish people because they thought, no, we're really honoring them, there would be hell to pay. I mean, so it's the same thing, with any distinct group of people, whether you're going to make fun of somebody because of their gender or orientation or their religion, their ethnic background, whatever. The thing is, there's a reason that animals have been used in the past, and if we believe that using mascots is supposed to be something that is entertaining, well, you just remember that if you're a school, your primary function is to educate, not to make a mockery of a people for your own entertainment or for your own fun. And I guess that's kind of where I leave it at anyway. But no, I will look up John Jay High School and I'll mention it next week when I get the full story. But there are schools we are winning this battle. Every school that gets engaged in this conversation and votes to keep their native mascot, all they're doing is kicking the can for somebody else to deal with later on. The overwhelming tide is where schools are changing not just the most racist names like Redskin, but warriors, chiefs, Indians, Braves, those things are all going by the Red Raiders. That's another one that they always try to use. Red Raiders. Yeah, that's another one. So, but no, they're all going by the wayside. And I applaud every school that finally comes to the realization to make the change. The sad part is there's always going to be that one village that tries like hell. Right now, like I said, there's two schools left in New York State that still hang on to the to the racial slur.
At some point they'll realize that they're out there by themselves, and they will get on the train. They'll just realize that they're not, it's not acceptable anymore.
Yes, I agree with you. Well,
so you're doing a lot to educate people that way. And when people finally educated, I think they become aware, and especially young people, I think, are very easily made aware of these things. And they're not as afraid to change tradition as older people are, I think.
Well, and it's funny because that's exactly right. When you look at the alumni who come out to fight these changes, it's always these guys who are still living in their glory days, from high school. Many of the changes that are happening at the high schools are initiated by students themselves. So, I give them not only praise and credit, but I think we need to empower our youth because, frankly, we can't brag we've done that well ourselves. So I think we better hope that there's hope in the future.
But there's another thing I wanted to ask. I don't know, maybe you don't have time to do it today. It's a big question, but I started wondering for a while ago, what was the position? What was the what am I trying to say? During the American Revolution, so-called, there were 13 colonies, right? And there were Native people living there all that time. What were they doing during that period? How did they react to all this war going on their land? And I'm curious to know, what would you estimate was the population of those 13 colonies, the Native population of those 13 colonies at that point? And how did they deal with this whole revolution? Did they get caught in the crossfire? Did they take part? What did they do? I know it's a big subject, so I don't know if you want to tackle it today, but I'll get off and listen anyway, see what you want to do with it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and that's a good question, and that's why I think if rather than making a mockery of Native people as mascots, it would make more sense to spend some time teaching about some of this stuff. As Haudenosaunee or Iroquois, a part of the Six Nations that are from the Mohawks, Oneidas, Onondagas, Cayugas, Senecas, and Tuscaroras. If you look at our history, we very much got caught into the crossfire. We had the British on one side trying to lure us to fight with them. We had on their side, we had the American colonists, and a lot of times religion played a big role in this thing. So the Confederacy, the Iroquois Confederacy, the Haudenosaunee, actually, none of the Six Nations took a stand. There was no grand council that said, okay, we are hereby on this side or that side. But within every community, there were Native people, mercenaries, I guess you would say, that got sucked into those battles. And I think this is probably true throughout the entire East Coast, where Native people were sucked into the whole thing. But regardless, it didn't matter which side Native people took. They still got blasted one way or the other. And when I talked about the Sullivan campaign earlier, that's George Washington, who the reason that he wanted to do the scorched earth against the Senecas is because the Senecas had remained loyal to the British crown, and there was good reason the Senecas did. The British were making secure promises of to respect their land. Part of the reason the Revolutionary War was even fought was because the King of England was forbidding the colonists from expanding further into native territories. That was one of and if you read the Declaration of Independence, it's actually laid out in there that the king was limiting their land expansion. Now, it doesn't talk about land expansion to where, but of course it was into native territories. So part of the reason that the colonists were fighting for the independence was fighting for the right to go farther into native territories. And it was the King of England who was assuring native people that he was not going to allow an expansion into their territories. Now, I'm not saying that he was being completely honest either. I think the whole idea that King George was hoping that he could convince Native people to become British subjects. But he wasn't trying to do it by force, and he wasn't trying to start a war over it. So I know that's not a complete answer, but we'll tackle the issue a little farther as we go on with future shows. But I appreciate the question, and again, all the more reason this stuff should be taught in school. All right, let me get to more callers. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from? All right, there we go. Oh, there you go. Caller, you're up next. Where are you calling from?
My name is Ron Toro. I'm from the Bronx.
All right. Thanks for calling.
Hello?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is something that I don't want to polarize the beautiful flow of your conversation. And just let me mention something that came to my mind when you said information and learning. That's the difference between BAI and any of these other stations. NPR, I could get information, but in BAI, I actually hear things and learn things. Like right now, you mentioned about the King of England. But anyway, the reason why I called is it's a simple thing, but all we ever see is this white supremacy, and even white people are deluded by this, what do you call, sense that they have within themselves. But the reality is that light only reflects off of light colors.
Yeah.
And from the beginning of time, vision of man, all life is animal. We're not talking about a God here. Vision is critical. Matter of fact, I think they even say the brain formed up, stretched back from the eye. So this is what has enabled people of light skin to sort of relax when they're together, and the mind is allowed to go into other things, more stress-free, less challenged at the moment. So they have progressed in a way, but it is simply that. It don't mean that we have a lesser brain. I'm Puerto Rican, but you understand?
Yep.
Very light skin, but my point is, all life is animal. And we, matter of fact, a Nobel Prize winner was Michio Kaku some years ago, that he, this book, Second Nature, he's a neuro scientist, and when Michio Kaku asked him, where does consciousness come from?
Well, look, let me get a chance to respond. And unfortunately, your phone line wasn't the most clear, so I'm hoping everybody could catch most of what you're saying. I want to respond to some of that. First off, you're right. There is a difference between providing information and teaching. And one of the things that is different about WBAI, most of the producers, they aren't just reporting news. They're actually talking about their place in a certain circumstance. So when I come here as a Native person, I'm not just telling you stuff about Native people. When I leave here, I go home. I go back to a Native territory in Western New York. I take an 8.5-hour train ride to get here from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation, and then I take an 8-hour bus ride home after the show. And I say that not because I'm trying to get praise or sympathy, but the point is my life is there, and so I'm living the experience of a Native person. So when I come here and I talk about my perspective, I'm not talking about perspective that I learned in a book or that I watched or heard on NPR or listened, read in a newspaper or whatever else. And I think that's true with many of the producers here at WBAI. They aren't just reporting. They aren't just producing a show. They're sharing their life experience. So, and that is what. Learning isn't just the idea of me telling you dates and figures and having you remember them. And when schools do that, when schools just try to recite things and expect kids to learn to remember them, remembering dates and names is not the same thing as learning. Learning is about your experience. So, you make a good point. The other point that you make is, I absolutely agree. One of the biggest problems with mankind is that we try to separate ourselves from the rest of creation, and we think that our religious dogma teaches us that God created this stuff for us, and that He implores people to subdue the earth. Well, no other creature on the planet has those original instructions from their creator, whatever that creator is. So I think that as man removes himself and tries to draw such distinction from the rest of the animal kingdom, they find themselves the cancer to the planet. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. All right, let me go to another caller. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, John.
Yes.
My name is Gord. I'm calling from the Montauk Nation.
All right. Wait, I missed the name. What's the name again?
Gordon.
Hey, Gordon. Well, Gordon, thanks for joining the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you for having me. I just wanted to let everybody know I was at the fabulous Hamptons Film Festival, and there's a great movie. It's going to be on PBS on the 18th called Conscious Point, and it's about the Shinnecock Nation, and it's going to be on PBS the 18th, coming up November 18th, and I wanted to say that. And also the woman that was talking about what the American people were doing here. There's a great book, Island in the Middle of the World, and the European Dutch settlers were trading with the American Indians for their furs and their other treasures. And they just had a mutual respect, and they traded with everybody. And I'm out here, and it's hysterical. It's not hysterical. It's pathetic to read. I grew up near the Mattinnecocks in western Long Island Sound, up in Little Neck and Marathon and Douglaston. And they have buried over there the last of the Mattinnecocks. But I was a boy, and I used to see them at parades. And now they're just celebrating out here how the famous Stephen Talkhouse, he was the pharaoh out here, the chief, and they declared them in a court of law as being extinct. And I think with WBAI and you and all of us, we have no idea how powerful we are as individuals. And it comes through loud and clear when you see this movie, Conscious Point, about the Shinnecock Nation here on Long Island.
All right. Well, I got it written down. I'll make a note of it to check it out myself. And again, I do screenings of films here at the Brooklyn Commons usually once a month. So maybe I'll get a chance to take a look at this, and maybe this is something that I should consider screening here. I appreciate the sentiment, but you're right. The relationship the Native people had with the colonists was not as confrontational or as antagonistic as some would believe, especially if you read the Declaration of Independence, where Thomas Jefferson refers to the king trying to incite the merciless Indian savages, to inflict violence against colonists. Most of it had to do with trade, but the greed associated with the colonists would push farther and farther, and the opportunity to make money off of this trade with Native people. Oftentimes, put white people into the Native communities, into the Native areas in such a way that more and more tension was brewing. That was the reason that King George wanted to put some limitations on how much expansion could go into Native territories, because he didn't want that battle, for these colonists. That he didn't want to have to spend the resources of the United Kingdom on trying to defend colonists who were creating a dangerous situation. But Gordon, look, I appreciate the call. I appreciate your comments.
One more comment.
Go ahead.
I have one more, and I think to honor our Native Americans, I think we should all push for that $20 bill. Who did they want to put on the $20 bill?
They want to put Harriet Tubman on there.
Harriet Tubman. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. But certainly Jackson coming off of there would be fine. And look, I will say that I'm not. The idea of Native people being put on U.S. currency, I'm not so sure how I even feel about that. But I think currency, and I think the capitalism of the United States is probably one of the biggest enemies to Native people or indigenous people globally. So I'm not sure that I feel that is that much of an honor. But I understand what you're saying.
To have pride, because look, we have all sorts of, like what we're just celebrating, Columbus Day, and it was to instill pride in the Italian Americans, but here it is. Many people call it Native American Day.
Yep.
Maybe Sacagawea.
No, I mean, there are noteworthy Native people in history. I'm just a little indifferent about that, but I do appreciate the sentiment. I do appreciate it.
Letting me. And again, Conscious Point, November 18th.
All right, got it. Conscious Point, November 18th on PBS. All right, we'll take a look at it. Thanks, Gordon. I appreciate it. All right. Look, we're at the bottom of the hour. We'll take a brief break. We'll go out another Murray Porter tune from his stand-up CD, a CD that I'm willing to throw out there to some of you folks who want to become a buddy and mention this show as your as the show you want to do it in the name of. Again, you can go to the pledge line, which is 516-620-3602. Become a buddy. Make a one-time donation. Make it big, make it small, but be sure to support WBAI. And, of course, tell your friends. And even your friends who want to listen in the closet. But by all means, tell your friends and let them know that there's something worth listening to here on 99.5 FM in New York City. And, of course, on WBAI.org. And we'll take more of your calls after this. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk.
Well, someday I'll never learn. Someday I'll never learn. Well, I'll lit the fires and I'm the one that got burned. When I was a young man, I had money to burn. I partied every night with every penny that I earned. I bought drinks for everybody, never got one in return. Well, someday I'll never learn. Someday I'll never learn. I'll lit the fires and I'm the one that got burned. Sometimes I feel alone in the middle of the night, but I ain't no fool. My mama raised me right, but I know, baby, I know you ain't treating me right.
That's Murray Porter. Someday I'll never learn. It's kind of a humorous song, but there's some truth to it. We do have a tendency to do more of the same, regardless of what our experiences are, and I think that's Murray Porter making light of the fact that we don't learn from lessons, and we see that all the time. Isn't that right, Reggie?
Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. That's all I can say on that one.
There you go. All right, so this is Let's Talk with John Kane. I normally got Shawnee Rice sitting here to my right. My banner on the back says from 4 to 5, but we're from 3 to 5 now. So and I appreciate getting the extra time, as some of our callers like Ken and others have suggested. The idea of having a 2-hour show really gives me an opportunity to rely more on the listeners and on the callers, and we want to encourage that. And look, one of the things that we clearly have to overcome with WBAI is getting some of our younger people engaged in the station, whether it's coming into the studio and sitting with us and joining us on the air, or whether it's calling. So let people know that there is a station that will take your calls and not screen you to the point that we put handcuffs on you. We'll let you voice your opinions, and we'll give you an honest response, at least depending on what show you're calling into and what host you've got. You're going to get a perspective from a host that will be genuine and again, allowing us to share our experience. So we're not just trying to spew facts and figures. We do some of that, but we're also trying to let you know what our experience has been in the political climate. Again, some great calls. I hate to dwell so much on just one caller, but Ken made some great points about.
Yeah.
I mean, if you watch, just to make his point, look at how many Republicans you know they can't stand Donald Trump, but they're afraid to come right out and say it. So there's a whole lot of closet Republicans who are anti-Trumpers who don't dare say anything because they're afraid of the retribution. I mean, am I right or am I right? I mean,
hey, it is what it is. I mean, this again. I think to add on to that as well too, it's just that it also challenges us here at the radio station to how to appeal to those people who are in secret listening to it. And let's be honest about this. I think that has been something of a pattern for not during this time, but for during the duration of this radio station as
throughout the history. You know there were people who had to listen to this station quietly without necessarily going public about it because look, this is like an insurgency. This station has been represented that kind of resistance. And resistance is usually the smaller group of people who are willing to demonstrate it.
It harkens back to me when I was told about there was members from MSNBC, and there is members of MSNBC, particularly during the morning show, their morning show, I guess that's the Scarborough Report, will listen to WBAI to see on certain things that they missed on stories, and they take notes.
Yeah.
And they have it on because I only know this because there was somebody over at MSNBC just told me about that and said that they have a chalkboard on there's news items and then there's WBAI items as well too. So
there you go.
There are people that are listening. There are people listening.
And again, I don't think we have to flush everybody out who listens to WBAI. We do need to have listeners support the station, and if you need to do it anonymously, Ken makes a good point. You can go down to the post office and a postal money order is cheap. And you can just leave the part blank who it's from, so you can make a contribution. Do fill in the line that says what show you listen to. And if you listen to multiple shows, put them all down. I mean, and by all means, I welcome people who just want to make general contributions to WBAI. But we do get caught into this numbers game sometimes, trying to figure out what shows do we deserve to be on for 2 hours, or should we be restricted to the 1 hour? I mean, that became a question, and I'm happy to be back here doing this show for 2 hours. All right, let me get back to the callers. I think this is an important part, and this is what I want to use the extra time for more than anything. So, caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller, you there? All right, let me give I think. All right, we lost somebody. So, all right, caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Brown from Harlem.
All right. Well, thanks for calling. Thanks for being a part of the show. What's on your mind?
Great show, John. You always, you bang on people pretty hard. That's all I can say. I've been listening to you for a while. You're a hard liner, bro. I got to give it to you. But I respect you because you got a lot of good info facts. John, you mentioned the movie. I know you mentioned the movie about, the Indians, the natives who did the music piece. But didn't you mention another movie about symbols? How I think you mentioned one about that, like they were using symbols and stuff, and somebody put a documentary out about that.
Symbols? You don't mean a musical? You mean what? Like images?
Yeah, images. You mentioned that one. I know about the music one. You mentioned that one, but the images one.
Well, the music one is Rumble, the Indians Who Rocked the World, and it's about the title track.
I'm familiar with that one.
Is Link Ray doing
the other one?
But the other one.
Did you mention?
More Than a Word.
I was thinking of that one. Yeah.
There's a film. In fact, we offered it as a premium here for a while.
Yep.
More Than a Word. It is. It kind of addresses the mascot issue, and it's by Ken Little. More Than a Word, and you can find that. It's probably listed in our on the.
It's available.
Yeah, we probably still have that available. If you look online and you go to our what's it called? The product index, is it?
Yeah, go to give2wbai.org and you'll be able to find it. Put in More Than a Word in the search engine of give2wbai.org. You should be able to find it.
give2wbai.org. Got it. And I'm going to go there. Go ahead.
Yeah, and put in the search engine More Than a Word.
Got it.
If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of that page, there's in small print. There's a couple of links, and one of them says product index, and I think you can find it in there too.
That too.
Yeah. So, but
Great,
more than a word. Look, you can look for it online. I'm
gonna do that.
I think
John,
I may
keep
have
up the
screened
good
that
work.
one before, and maybe that's another one to consider screening again here at the
Yeah,
comments.
John, you're doing good work. Keep up the word. I'm with you, man.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the call.
Have a good day, man.
All right.
Thank
You too.
Okay.
Man, look, it is so great to hear from you guys again, and the idea that we've got more time for these calls is just great. The number is 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to be a part of the show. Voice your thoughts, your opinions. Give me a question. Fire something out at me. Again, Joan, thanks for asking about about where Native people have been in various parts of Native history, and that's kind of what we're trying to do here. So for all of you, again, the number 212-209-2877. Let me go back to the callers. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm calling from the East Village.
Hey, Liz. Well, thanks for being a part of the show.
Well, I am really grateful that we're back in local control, and all of us are back on the air. So it's good to hear you.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you. And I'm a teacher, an educator, and a filmmaker, and I always try to expose my very diverse students to other diverse perspectives that they may not know. So I'm going to steer them towards WBAI this year. And I just wanted to draw to your attention that you were talking about the use of language, and then you referred to mankind. And as a female, I don't feel included when the term mankind is used, or him to refer to all people. And
I was using it in a
you-
negative consequence, by the way.
I know it was derogatory. I know that. I did understand that, but it's kind of important to me because I know when I was growing up as a little girl, and they said terms like be a cameraman or be a businessman or whatever it might be. Well, I never wanted to be a business person, but I never felt included. So I always insist that when my students, that they never use that term, and so I use gender neutral terms.
Well, it's kind of funny because even the use of Native mascots. If you were to think that you were going to learn everything you need to learn about Native people through mascots, you would think that we didn't have any women. Because there is never, ever a Native woman or a woman in general used as a mascot for any school. I don't even think, girls-only schools, or if those things still exist, they must still exist someplace. I mean, I just wonder if any of them, So it's kind of, you're right, the gender bias, and of course, anytime we talk about gender bias. If you take any other kind of bias, that's ethnic or religious or, nation of origin, if you already have a bias and then you compound that with the gender bias, you're going to find, and that's why we have things like missing and murdered Indigenous women, because women become victimized times two based on not only their ethnicity or their race, but then further victimized because of their gender. So no, you make a good point, and it is, the English language. Again, most of those who were responsible for the formation of the English language were men, because they were the ones who were entitled to to literacy, and that's why so much of the language is skewed towards men. But you're right. There does need to, just like the whole "you people" thing. I think it should catch in people's throats. But when we use words like man as a suffix, we should understand that we are being very exclusionary. It's kind of ironic because they made a big deal about the moon landing, and Neil Armstrong, when he took his step onto the moon, he even screwed up the line. What he was supposed to say, and again, I'm not saying it addresses the gender issue completely, but he even made it worse. He said, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." What he was meant to say, or what he was supposed to say, was one small step for a man, for him. One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Still has some gender problems, but he even complicated it even more because he couldn't even he messed up the line.
Well, thank you so much, and I'll keep listening, and I'm going to be giving to the radio station.
Well, I appreciate that, and again, Liz, thanks for your comments, and thanks for holding us accountable. Like I said, we do need to be responsible. Words do matter, and it's not just enough to say what the intent was. I think anytime we get called out on use of language that is offensive, or even if it isn't so blatantly offensive, but it becomes exclusionary, I think that's just as problematic, and I think that's your point, and I greatly appreciate it. All right, let me go to another caller. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is William, and
Hey,
I'm
William.
calling from East Orange, New Jersey.
All right. Well, it's good to hear from you. What's
And
on your mind?
Well, I was a history teacher for 23 years, and I wanted to thank you for the following. Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz's book on people's history of indigenous people's history in the United States. I also learned from you the papal bulls, which initially I said, geez, they're that bad, the Catholic leaders? And, of course, they were. The other thing that from Dunbar Ortiz that I really liked was both the terms genocide and settler colonialism, which then I also read her book about the Second Amendment.
Yeah, Loaded,
Locked and Loaded, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it was a great book. And if people want to understand the gun culture in this country, it starts from day zero. Because in order for the, quote, settlers to survive, there was a law in the Massachusetts colony where every male had to have a loaded gun in their house. Otherwise, they could get a ticket of some kind, like a misdemeanor. So that's how sick parts of our history is, just beyond sick. And unfortunately, I'm retired, so I missed the classroom dramatically, but I learned a lot from you, and I thank you.
Well, and again, it's my privilege to have folks like Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz join me on the show as often as she does. The Papal Bulls, again, Pagans in the Promised Land by Stephen Newcomb is a great book to really lay out some of the details of that. And I also, I make a point to try to show films that demonstrate some of that stuff. And the other thing that I do when I'm not here back home, I have a YouTube channel which is called Let's Talk Native TV. If you look me up on YouTube, I not only put my shows, the videos of my shows on my YouTube channel, but I also create short form videos. I did a great one that's called Columbus in His Own Words, where I use some of the words of Columbus and his contemporaries to kind of tell some truth about his, the true history. But if you look at some of the short form videos, I try to explain even some basic concepts that people don't understand. Genocide is a perfect example. I'm actually considering working with a crew from back in Seneca territory to do a full-length documentary on not just genocide as it relates to Native people, but more specifically where the word comes from. And like so many phrases from history, whether it's the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, those are written by white people for white people. And when people of color began to say, wait a second, it says all men are created equal. And so what ends up happening is these words written by white people for white people, they get confronted with their own language, and they have to either reconcile that, or they got to say, well, it doesn't really mean that. Genocide as a term was used for what was happening in Europe. It's what white people were doing to white people in Europe. So the whole idea that when you look at the international definition of genocide today, you'd swear it was a concept that was developed specifically to address indigenous people, but it wasn't. And I think when we try to raise those issues about genocide against Native people, we get pushback, frankly, even from some Native people. There are some people who think, no, genocide should be reserved for what happened to the Jews, or for what's happened in Somalia, or what's happened in other places. And they almost refuse to accept that what the Native experience has been in this country and throughout the Western Hemisphere has been nothing short of a genocide.
Well, the Nuremberg definition is kind of interesting because it uses the qualifier an attempt to do something to a group or to part of a group.
Exactly.
And therefore, it's fairly widely applicable.
Well, and again, you don't have to have a successful genocide for it to be a genocide. Yeah,
right.
and so you're right, and that the Nuremberg definition is what kind of got expanded. And of course, when you look at the international definition, it's not just the idea of killing people; it's about idea of physically harming or psychologically harming. Yeah. It's the idea of sterilizing or trying to reduce the ability to reproduce, which Native people went through that through sterilization programs. It was the idea of taking children away or doing anything that creates the condition that would cause the people to cease to exist as a people. And when you look at that, it sounds like it was written specifically to address the atrocities committed against Native people. But again, it wasn't.
The other thing that bugs the hell out of me is when people quote the founding, and I used to have trouble saying this in class, the founding the guys.
Those guys.
But anyway, Thomas Jefferson had a wonderful, the brilliant Thomas Jefferson, no thank you, that the indigenous peoples are so stupid because they don't understand that to be really human, you have to get involved in commercial agriculture. You grow crops and sell them, otherwise you're not using the land properly, and therefore we can take it from you. And there's another quote from Gorgeous George, who said, the only thing that Native Americans, and he used that term, or Indians maybe, have in common with the white man is their shape. And we use those quotes in class all the time to, it's like calling Henry Kissinger well-educated. Now, Henry Kissinger can read real well, but he's also a war criminal who should be put on trial and dealt with in that fashion. So, the concept of well-educated has to be qualified.
Right. And well-educated doesn't necessarily mean somebody has developed any skills in the humanities, that's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, but just thanks again.
Well, thank you for your comments. And those quotes are great, and that's part of this list of commentary from all of the presidents of the United States. But it goes right up through. I mean, you can find some really, really atrocious things said by every one of them. White supremacy was not something that was just advocated by most of the presidents of the United States. It was a foregone conclusion that white people were superior, and you see that and you read that well into the 20th century, and frankly, it's still being embraced very strongly by in the 21st century. So I think when you highlight the actual language that some of these these people are that are heroized, that they used, I mean, it's pretty appalling. And again, to your point about Thomas Jefferson, he was considered the enlightened one. He was considered the most enlightened U.S. president, and yet he had very, very strong racist views towards Native people in particular. So, all right, I think I got time for probably just one more caller. So we'll do one more caller before we call it quits for this week. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, my name is Valeria. How are you?
Hi, Valeria. Thanks for calling.
Oh, thank you. I'm calling from Brooklyn. I'll be short. I came in from shopping and from visiting the doctor. I sat in my kitchen where my radio is on. I'm still sitting in the kitchen. You are fascinating. You are knowledgeable. It is a wonderful thing to listen to you. As a retired teacher, I learned something today, and I called my son in Texas so he could research it. You said that there was an Indian vice president, and I didn't have my pen handy to write down the notes.
Charles Curtis. Now, Charles Curtis. He was the vice president.
And he was my family is African American and Cherokee Indian. Now my daughter tried to get us declared as Indians, but they told her, she has a master's from a college. They told her that we would have to be adopted by a tribe. I'm from North Carolina. So how do we research that? My great-grandparents were Cherokee, Scots-Irish, and pure Cherokee in North Carolina.
Well, here's the thing. Every native peoples, they all get to have their own standards for what qualifies as being among them. So,
I see.
Part of it, unfortunately, and I'm not a big fan of the whole blood quantum thing because, frankly, dogs and horses are used, are measured, have their pedigree measured. So, So I mean, look, ancestry is certainly part of it for some places, and I think the Cherokee, they do have the bar isn't that high in terms of ancestry, from what I understand, with some of them. But I think you have to have definitive proof, and then you make application. It's not necessarily about being adopted; it's about whether your enrollment, I guess, is accepted or not. And
that's what we were looking for.
The biggest issue, and here's where it is for me. I think the biggest issue isn't whether somebody has Native ancestry, but have they? Can you really invest the time to be a part of a people? Because I don't think to be a people isn't about blood. I mean, there's no such thing as American ancestry. So I mean, but. So I think that's part of the challenge, but I look, if you track through Cherokees have really good records, and I mean the Cherokees in both the Carolinas all the way out to Oklahoma. They have been extraordinary.
I've been to Oklahoma too. Go ahead, yeah.
They have been extraordinary in terms of their record keeping. So if you have ancestry and names that can be tracked, you can probably have some success with some of the folks. Cherokee probably better than most because they've been great at records.
One more little quick question.
Go ahead.
Since I live in New York and I'm a retired teacher, I thought I had stopped teaching. What book can I get to pass it on to children through my church and other organizations about all these tribes that you talk about in New York that we didn't know anything about?
I don't know if there's one book that does it. I mean, what I will say is that, as the caller indicated, Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz's book, which is an Indigenous People's History of the United States, it's kind of Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. It's a hyphenated name, Dunbar Ortiz. She's written a couple of good books. She also did one with Dino Gilio Whitaker, which is called All the Real Indians Died Off and 20 Other Myths About Native Americans. Those two books are pretty good, but they aren't necessarily going to specify the native peoples from New York, what is now called New York State. I'm Haudenosaunee, which is the Six Nations of the Iroquois Confederacy. Most people know that. But there's also all of the Lenape and all the native the Algonquin peoples from Long Island, and there are a lot of native peoples who have lived in what is now called New York State, and I think it's important that we do acknowledge them. And I'm just one of them that happens to make the trip down. I'm Mohawk or Gunya Gahaga. But my wife is Oneida, and I live in Seneca territory. So I make the trip through much of our ancestral lands just to get here every week to do this show. Look, Valeria, I want to thank you for the call. I've got to wrap up and call it a day.
And I'm going to contribute to the station.
All right, I sure do appreciate it. For those of you who are listening who would like to do the same, you can go to the pledge line. It's 516-620-3602. That's the number to call to be a donor, a sponsor, a buddy to WBAI, and we would greatly appreciate it. And more than appreciate it. We need it. So we look to you to spread the word and to make contributions to the station. This is John Kane. I'll see you back next week, 3 to 5 again on WBAI. We'll probably have Shawnee with us next week as well. So we'll see you next week. This is John Kane. Yahweh.
And this is listener-sponsored, locally controlled WBAI in New York. And welcome back, John.
Well, thanks for not only thanks for helping to get the station back, wrestled control back, but thanks for giving me the second hour. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to bring our listeners in.
You're coming from so far, and you're bringing so much to our listeners. So we really appreciate you and all that you're contributing. I want to tell you guys listening right now that I just went into our station manager's office, and all weekend I was telling people to just please tell listeners to send in checks. And people are sending in checks. So maybe we can just encourage more people to do that. WBAI Pacifica is how you make out a check, and just send it right in.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if you heard, but we had a caller call in. He said, some people are closet listeners of WBAI. And so you can go right down to the post office and get a postal money order. So if you don't want to put your name, you want to fill in who you are, if you want to remain an anonymous donor, you certainly can do that. There are a number of ways to do that. So, look, we appreciate people who support the station. And I understand we live in a very toxic political climate. And so some people would rather, gain their information and have their affiliations be a little less pronounced. And look, there's no shame in that. The main thing is that we appreciate the listeners who listen to the programs, and we do rely on you. So if you can make a contribution, by all means, do so.
Yes, make out your check to WBAI Pacifica. We are listener-sponsored, non-corporate, listener-sponsored, non-commercial radio. You make it out to WBAI Pacifica, and you send it in to 388 Atlantic Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. 11217, that's the address, 388 Atlantic Avenue. We thank you so much for that. Coming up next is Driving Forces. Now, we are not really returning to regular programming. You have, you see a lot of the regular, you're hearing a lot of our hosts, but it's still an emergency situation. Right, John?
Absolutely. And again, that's why while we're still trying to return to some normalcy, we can't ignore the fact that, look, we were in the very beginning of a fund drive when things kind of went a little haywire. So we're recovering from that, and we're looking at big picture. And if there's one thing that has been made clear to us, and it should be made clear to listeners, we really do rely on you. And the only way that we can keep this station going is to make sure that we have our listeners engaged, both by dialing in and participating in the shows, but also by contributing and encouraging others to do the same thing. So again, the pledge line's 516-620-3602. You can go online, which is www.give2wbai.org. That's GIVE, the number 2, WBAI.org. And of course, as Linda said, the address here is 388 Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. You can send a check to WBAI Pacifica. We appreciate it however it gets here. We need your support and look forward to it.
And thank you.
We'll see you next week. This is John Kane for Let's Talk.